Bronson, welcome to the show. How are you?
Excited to be here. Love talking about life and money, two of my favorite things.
Well, we're thrilled to have you here. Now, I'm going to dive straight in because I know you had a moment in your history that changed everything for you, changed the trajectory of where you thought you were going in life. You had been working in medical device sales for 10 years. And even though it was still, you were still having a little bit of fun doing it. It sounds like you got to a point where you were like, is this the way? Or is there something else out there? And I know that a lot of our listener audience has gotten to that point where they feel stuck, where they're like, I don't know if this is really the path for me. So take us to that moment and share with us, what was going on in your life during that time and then what happened next.
Yeah, so I had been, I'd made a decision previously. I think, Tony Robbins has this quote, says, it's in your moments of decision that your destiny is shaped. So I'd made a decision that I wanted to leave my job. I had a job, I was making over 200K a year in medical device sales, and it was good, but I didn't like that I didn't have control over my time. A lot of people say I want financial freedom, but it really comes down to time freedom. And to me, I had a few single family houses. It wasn't going as fast as I wanted. So I started getting mentors and learning about multifamily investing. And this event that happened for me, I went to this high ticket event, and somebody who's in the industry that you know as well. We've talked about this person, and basically I approached them, and I just knew them, as not really that well, but I said, hey, how's it going in this area of your business and raising money? And I basically pitched them an idea that I could come on board and help to raise money. And up to that point, I'd raised 100,000. And then after this conversation he agreed to do it, and we agreed to work together. Over the next 18 months, we raised $15 million together. And I was basically set up to be able to leave my job within those 3 years that I'd planned. So it's amazing how you set the intention, the goal, you make the decision. And then as your mind will sometimes something happens, it's like, oh, I'm going to do this. And it can just show up in your life, which is amazing.
Okay, hold on. So you went from 100,000. So you had raised 100,000 on your own before. So you kind of had proven the model.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I have a saying, life has an action bias, right? So you can have great plans and great ideas, but when you actually move forward and you actually start taking action, it actually can change. So yeah, what you were saying too, Annie, is it's correct. Basically that this was a very significant moment in my life because it wasn't happening for me as quickly as I'd like. It really wasn't happening very fast. And so to me, I just kept, trying. Again, another Tony Robbins quote is you keep the end goal in mind and you just continually change your approach. So it's like, well, route A, didn't work. Route B was okay. C was, but D, this was it. And then you just double down on it. That's really what happened. And so that was really one of those experiments that I had. I'm going to go for it. And the worst that could happen is if somebody says, no, I don't want to work with you. One thing I've learned is that, at the end of the day, a lot of times, if you want to get ahead, you have to be willing to ask. And I think having a sales background is you just get used to being rejected. And rejection, public speaking and rejection, I think spiders are up there too, are things people hate. They don't want to be put on the spot. But I've realized that if I'm willing to ask, the worst that could happen is someone could say no, and that's okay. And so I've just learned that, over time, if I can just keep asking, and I call these, it's not just in asking people to do stuff for you or with you as partners, but it's trying out or learning something, right? So I call it like a low risk experiment, right? A high risk experiment is like you lose all your money or you die or something like that. It's like if something doesn't go the way you want it, something terrible happens, right? That's a high risk experiment. A low risk experiment is maybe I'm out a little bit of money, a little bit of time. Maybe I got my ego's hurt a little bit. But, if it works, it could be incredible. And I've just been amazed at as I've asked, doors have opened. I asked Ken McElroy to be on a couple events and he decided to join. He actually, my book behind me here, he did the forward to it. And just, things like that where it's like, well, how did this happen? Well, I just asked. And so if you're willing to ask and if you're bold and you're asking, the worst that can happen typically is somebody can just say no. It's really about the story we tell ourselves about something that happens. And to me, this was really hard for me as well. Even so after I had that conversation, after I raised the 15 million, I was still scared to leave my job because all of my family, they're all teachers. They all do, stable jobs. They're all like, no, you're crazy. Why would you leave your 200K, your job? You're doing it like 30 hours a week. No, never do it. And I realized it was so tough. And then I got in a room full of entrepreneurs and they helped to kind of reality check it for me. Like, well, they all 5 or 6 of them were like, hey, we've heard your story, we've heard what you're doing. You should pretty much leave your job as soon as possible. And one of them said, and if it doesn't work out, you could always go back to medical sales. And I was kind of like, huh, okay. But it's funny how like we attach so much to like, if this succeeds or fails, I'm a success or I'm a failure. And it really goes back to that book. A great book on this topic is called Mindset by Carol Dweck. It says people that have a growth mindset look at everything as learning. There's no such thing as failure unless you choose to mean that you're a failure, right? If I look at it like this is just information, oh, this didn't work. Well, I'm going to learn from this. Then it's an opportunity for growth. The people that have a fixed mindset, and we all can fall into this. This thing happened and it failed, so therefore I'm a failure. And I could talk a lot about my failure, all the things I've done that I've failed in. But the more I'm willing to put myself in, be in a place where I could fail, the more success I find I achieve. A lot of this stuff, it's amazing the link between personal development as well as business growth or just growth in different areas of your life. So it's almost always I've had a breakthrough in my personal development, at least to some huge like 10x net worth kind of thing. Not always, but it can really lead to that. And so there's a quote by Jim Rohn, motivational speaker who's no longer alive, but he said this quote, he said, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Robert Kiyosaki said this one time. I heard him live, and he got really emphatic. He says, "Stop listening to poor people." It's like you're trying to learn about finance, but like a lot of people you're listening to, they don't have any money. If you want to be wealthy, you've got to listen to wealthy people. If you want to be in great shape physically, you've got to get around people that are really healthy and doing these healthy habits. And so it's like that. If I want to be an entrepreneur, if I'm interested in that, I can't listen to the people that have been stuck in a job and that maybe they feel like they just are not wired to be entrepreneurs. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just I can't listen to those people when it comes to that advice. And so I just think of who you listen to and who you take in and whose opinion of you matters. It's really important who you're listening to. There's Dan Sullivan who wrote this 10X book, 10X and 2X. He talks about the entrepreneurial time system where you have 3 types of days. You have your focus days, which are like doing interviews or pitching deals or talking to investors. There's more buffer days, which are more planning and kind of prep stuff. And then there's free days. And a free day is where, I'm not, in my emails, I'm not answering investor calls. I'm not doing those things. And so I once a quarter, I go away for 2 nights and I just do planning. I have one coming up. I was actually just away last week, did one. I do another one at the end of this year, but I'm going to get away. And I have a printed big, large calendar. And I went through for this year. I plan to take 150 free days this year. I didn't get to 150 free days. I got to, I think maybe 140. So I was close. But again, I just go through and I'll plan out different chunks of like, okay, here's a time I could take a trip here. Here's a time I could take a trip here. How I choose where I go, I get these notifiers when it's like, oh my gosh, how could I not go when it's that cheap? And so I've gotten some great deals. I was in Ireland in August. Went for $380, used points for most of that trip as well. Portugal, similar. So it's just, if you can find, if you have flexibility of time and you can shift things around, obviously with family, it's a little more, you got to figure things with, things like that with children. But no, I just really enjoy being able to explore. I think it's been 43 countries so far, and just love being able to, live out the value of learning while traveling.
Wow. So that's 150 days of the year that are free days that you're like out, like you're not working during those days. Right?
If you think of it this way, so this is a helpful tool. If you just look at weekends, if you don't work on the weekends, which is a lot for some people. A lot of people say, oh my gosh, how come that? But if you really think about it, there's very little things that could actually fall apart. Now, maybe something could fall apart, but maybe you have somebody in your team, especially your team gets bigger, that can help you cover on the weekends. So just the weekends is 104 days. And then if you add in holidays, it adds another 11 or 13. So you're up to like 115, 118 days. So it's actually not that many days. And then you take a couple weeks on top of that, then it's more days. So, but again, I think it's a lot of creativity comes when you're outside of the office. There's some studies that show like 92 or 94% of great ideas come when you're not sitting at a desk in an office, right? So when I'm out running, when I'm out walking, when I'm traveling, it just brings a novelty and adventure. And then you come back and you have this just awesome energy when you come back. And so to me, I think it's like exercise and travel have led to so many creative ideas that have really, generated a lot of value in my business. And so to me, it's just how I've realized how I function. And then when you travel, I think you just learn so much. And a lot of people have this idea, oh yeah, I'd love to do that bucket list trip. Well, I do them every quarter. I try to do every quarter. Every year. My big one this year was Nepal and India. I went for 18 days and I did a 11-day hike to the base camp of Mount Everest. I didn't climb Everest, I went to the base camp. And it was amazing, right? And it was challenging. It's great, but it's awesome. So I think that those are things that, and not everybody's in a situation where they can do that, but there's things you can do. And what would you do with that free time? What would you create if you weren't thinking about work? And it's actually a lot of times a lot more than just allowing everything to fill in all the time.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think it's all about that intentionality. Even if, well, having any goal is better than having no goal, right? Even
Yeah.
if you're like,
Totally.
okay, there's 104 days of weekend days in the year. Let me just take those to start.
Yeah.
And let me just plan not to work on the weekend days. Great. That's your goal for right now. Or if you want to 10x it, you say 200 free days. Okay, how can I think way outside the box to get there? But
Yeah.
I similarly, a few years ago, I remember my husband and I made a goal to spend 3 weeks of the year away from home. So in hotels or home exchanges or traveling with the family. Right. And so we made it. We made it to 3 weeks. And at the time, it was a big leap for us because we had only taken like little weekend trips here and there prior to that. 3 weeks was a big deal for us. And now, as I think over this year, I spent well over 3 weeks just in solo retreats on my own.
Yeah.
Like I was in Scotland for
But,
2 weeks. I just came back from Tulum on a retreat.
oh,
I was
nice.
in Mexico earlier this year at San Miguel de Allende. And so,
Oh, nice.
it's just about that intentionality and really setting the stage and then incrementally increasing those goals. And then it doesn't seem so hard.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. There's a rule called Parkinson's law, and it says that tasks fill the time allotted to them. And so, if
Mm,
you have an assignment that you're like, oh, it's going to take me
yes.
all day, well, how long, or you have all day, it's going to take you
Hmm.
all day. But if you give
Yeah.
yourself an hour, you can fit it in an hour. So I'll do things like even during the day, like I got this amount of time, I'm going to get this, and I'll just get what do I need, and every day
Yep.
I have a list of
Uh-huh.
things. And it's amazing how productive you can be when you structure your time and you give
Ah,
yourself limits.
yes.
And then also with delegation, if you get good team members, a lot of times there's like, I've realized
Yeah.
like my unique ability are three things. It's strategy, it's networking, and it's creating. And if I can do those things, I'm a happy camper and I get paid to do it. I love
Yeah.
it. Right. But
Yeah.
everything else, if I can give everything else, even some of those things I can give away, if I can have other people do all these things, then people look at me like, oh my gosh, you're everywhere. You're doing everything. You're trying. I'm like, I'm really
Yeah.
not. I mean, secretly, I'm really not doing everything. Like I'm focused when I'm here, but like, I'm kind of just not really doing everything, but
Yeah. Well, Bronson, I know that people are going to want to follow up with you and learn more. So tell them if they did want to connect with you, where can they go?
So I have a free gift for your audience. It's something that I put together. It's, people are talking about that inflation is down. We found it's actually 50% higher as far as food prices than it was 4 years ago. And I think that if you know something with certainty, the government will continue to create more currency and cause more inflation. But there's a way that you can actually use this to your advantage. And so I created a free guide called how to use inflation to your advantage, using real estate, using debt, using precious metals, some really unique strategies that a lot of people haven't found. And so if you text the word inflation to 33777, you can get that free guide. So that's the word inflation to 33777.
Fantastic. Bronson Hill, founder of Bronson Equity. Thank you so much for being here with us and our listeners today.
Thanks, Danny. Appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.